Hello, everyone. Let's wait maybe half a minute for our to be correct, and we'll get started in a moment. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to JavaScript Marathon. This time it's a full week of free online courses in some of the leading web development technologies and concepts. I am your trainer for today. My name is Chris, and I'm a senior software engineer at this.labs. Today we will be learning about shaping user experience with RxJS. If at the end of this talk you will have any questions, feel free to post them here in the comments section below. But if you have any questions after today, feel free to follow me on KTRZ__, or you can also direct message me at the same handle on Twitter. And special thanks to our sponsor today, this.labs, offering personalized training programs to suit your organizational needs, ensuring you and your company stay on the leading edge. If you find keeping up with constantly evolving technologies a struggle and want to bring your team up to speed on the latest technologies, contact us today at hi@this.co to set up your complementary needs assessment. And also, this.labs is hiring, so if you're interested, send us your info at jobs@this.co. Before we get started, here are a couple of exciting online events we're hosting over the next couple of months. Join us live to have a chance to hear important updates within the community and the chance to ask any questions you like. Find out more and register for the link to watch at this.media.com. That's it for the introduction. Let me just share the correct screen again. Okay, so, oops. Sorry for that. Okay. So this talk is using as a starting point my latest blog post about implementing drag and drop feature using RxJS. You can find this later on our blog at this.co/blog. And I put the end result code in our starting point example under this link. I will post it in the comments section in a moment. So you can start, you can code along with me. Or you can also see the latest live results under this link, in case you just want to listen. Live results, live up here. So the starting point of my blog post is basically drag and drop feature implementing using RxJS, and for that I'm using only mouse events for right now. So as you might see, it works nice, but only with a mouse. If we switch to mobile view, which uses touch events, as you can see, it doesn't work. So as a first step, we will implement the dragging behavior in touch, but let's start with maybe explaining a bit how it is implemented for the mouse events, so that we are all aligned. We have the base set up. So I will close this for a moment. So there are actually three events which we are taking advantage of. Two of them are mouse up and mouse move on the document, so on the whole web page. This is because if we drag our element for some short periods of time, our cursor may fall out of the dragged element. So I listen to the mouse up and mouse move events on the whole document to make sure that even if that happens, our dragged element will catch up soon enough. Then basically we are taking each element from the web page with a draggable class, and we apply a function to each of those, which actually contains the bulk of the logic in here. So this is another set of functions calls. So here we create our actual RxJS observables, which we then the structure to update the position and to emit the events that I defined. This is drag start, when we start dragging an element. Drag move is emitted while we are moving an element. And when we finish dragging an element, so when we release the mouse button, we will fire drag end. And just to visualize those events, I am printing them, and we can use regular event listeners to hook up to those drag start and drag end. And while I'm performing dragging, we can see that drag start is being fired, and when I release mouse button, the drag end is also being fired. Let me make that bigger. Again, the bulk of the RxJS logic is happening in the create drag events. So let's go in here. So this is where we actually start listening to the mouse down event, and this is a separate event per each draggable element. So this will act as a trigger for our dragging behavior to be started. So drag start is actually pretty simple. Every time we press mouse down on the given draggable element, we will fire a drag start event. The only thing I'm doing here is basically mapping that to a common drag event interface that I've created, so that afterwards we have a common interface. You can see it here. For example, we've got some useful information apart from just an original event. We've got a starting target. We've got some offsets which will be useful to set the new position of the dragged element. Let's go back to create drag events. So after we have our drag start stream, RxJS stream ready, we can use it to trigger and start listening to the mouse move events on the document itself. So unless until we actually start dragging, we don't actually set a handler for the mouse move events. So this is important because therefore we don't hook up any logic unless it's necessary. So after the drag start event is emitted, we need to switch to another observable of mouse move events. So this is basically a mouse move event on the document itself. We make sure that we have an initial value of start, and then we again map to drag event to have the same API, event API across all the events. And this is also very useful because this toDrag event will calculate for us any deltas and offset that we need to place our element in the window itself. So it basically calculates it based on the current move event and the starting event and calculates the delta between those. Okay, we've got mouse move, and very important thing is that our mouse move needs to stop at some point. So this is where take until operator from RxJS comes in handy. It will basically make sure that our drag move will fire events until we release our mouse button. So when this event fires for the first time, the whole stream will be ended. So this is very important when we deal with some events that are possibly getting canceled. That's why we use switch map in here, so that when another drag start occurs, we can restart this the stream from scratch, basically. And the drag end is very similar to drag move. It is actually the same up until this point. And since drag end only occurs once at the end of the whole dragging motion, we are only interested in the last event that occurs before we close the stream. And then we return drag start, move, and end to our calling functions so that we can update positions and dispatch our events. If at any point during the presentation you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section, and I will try to respond to them between the sections of this talk. Okay, so I hope that this short explanation helped you understand what is actually happening in here, so that this dragging and dropping behavior is working. Let's use similar approach to implement this behavior, but using touch events. So I've copied the code that let's actually copy it. I've created a new file for that, so that we can safely work of that. And for that to actually work, we need to just switch imports in the index.ts file here to v1. As this is just copied and pasted, this works exactly the same as it used to. So before we implement our feature in using touch events, let's refactor this function a bit so that it's easier for us to separate those. So I will create another function which will be called function create mouse drag events, and it will similarly take an element, HTML element, and I will just paste in the logic. We need the mouse down event as well. And actually, let's rename it to drag start mouse. And here, and drag move mouse and drag and mouse. And at the end, we just return those. Return drag start mouse, drag move mouse, and drag and mouse. Okay, so by using this small refactor, we can simplify the logic in here. So let's just define a const with all those methods and create drag mouse drag events element. So we've got all of those all of those drag events that use mouse as a trigger. So let's just for now assign them directly in here. And drag and mouse. Okay. So by doing this, we should end up with the same functionality as before. Let me just clear the console so that we are sure. Yep, it's still the same. So the great thing about RxJS is that we can implement both functionalities like in parallel, and then use operators provided by RxJS to basically merge those functionalities. So similarly to create drag events, mouse drag events, we can create an analogous function, which I will call. I will just duplicate it for now and call it create touch drag events. So now we are interested not in mouse down event, but touch start. And just to be consistent, let's call it touch start in here. Okay. And we also need to create similar events on the document itself. So I will just copy this. Touch mouse up will be similar to touch end. And mouse move will be similar to touch move. So we can listen to those events. It's touch end and touch move. Okay, let's go back to our function. I will collapse this one so it doesn't makes it hard for us to work with. Okay, so let's start by implementing a drag start, but using touch. And let's use touch starting here. So this event in here won't be a mouse event. This would be a touch event. So we actually need some different function to align it with the interface of drag event itself. I will just use the pre-prepared function because it's just a glue code and it's not very useful to make it separate. So this drag of event, we imported from the types that are provided in here. Drag move event, and we actually need ID, so we can just take a start touch identifier. And what do we miss else? Target is missing, so let's implement target as well. Target. So we can use this. Okay, so now we comply with the drag move event interface, and let's call this function instead of to drag event. And now it is clear. Just making sure. So this is actually, since the touch event is a bit different than mouse event, we need to basically the touch start event can be triggered multiple times when we touch the screen. This is probably because we can touch the pressure at which we touch the screen can change until we start moving our finger. So this is basically to make sure that we can handle also the pressure. But for us, it doesn't matter. We are only interested in the first event. So let's use distinct until changed to only use the first event. And this is actually very simple. We can use a comparison function, A equals B. And a second param will be a mapping touch event, which will basically make the result of this function will be placed under A and B for the two consecutive events. So we are interested in event dot target touches, and this is another tricky part of touch events. They can be actually more than one touch events happening at the same time. But for the simplicity now, we will only take the first one. And we actually are interested in the identifier. And we are missing comma. Okay. That's great. Let's continue with our drag move events for touch. Here again, we will start from the drag start event to use it as a trigger. And then we basically switch to not mouse move, but touch move. So this is very similar. And the only difference again is that we are not taking it until mouse up is triggered, but taking it until touch end is triggered. And the similar approach should be applied to drag move. No, this was drag move, drag and touch. We start again by using drag start touch, and this whole thing can be basically copy and pasted, and the only thing we are interested in is the last operator. And to finish up the whole thing, we should return those created events. Actually, there is a gotcha. It's actually easier for me to handle do this mapping at the end in here. Let's start. Should be. So that in here, I'm actually getting touch events rather than touch event to, okay, this should be to drag to touch to drag event. And this as well. So that those two can be handled similarly. Okay. So now all of our events are returning a drag event. We made sure that it's happening for start as well in here. Let's maybe break this down to multiple lines so it's easier to read. And now we need to actually use this function similarly to how we used it in here. So let's just define a const and the structure, all of those elements. And let me drag here. This should be just like that. I think I didn't copy the whole. Drag, start, touch. Okay, so we've got those touch those drag events that are based on the touch inputs, but how do we make those? How do we handle those together with our drag start mouse and events? So this is where the merging possibility that I've mentioned before comes into play. So there is a merge operator in RxJS. We need to actually import it here. And where is this merge? So we can actually merge our drag start based on the mouse and our drag start based on the touch events, and do the similar for the rest of those. So now our dragging behavior should, with the mouse, should behave the same. So we've got drag start when we start dragging with the mouse. We've got drag end when we stop dragging with the mouse. But when we switch to a mobile view, our drag behavior should behave the same for the mobile as well. As you might see, there's some default behavior from drag event. We might just use prevent default on the drag on the touch move. Where do we put that? Since we are updating position on drag move, we can basically add another tab in here. And this would be let's do it on the drag on the touch move. So touch move. Well, there are multiple places where we can add this. So let's just add it here. App event. Maybe let's do it before we actually map to drag event, so it's easier for us. So this will be a touch event, and we just call event prevent default. So now you can see that we are actually getting some errors. This is because we defined our touch move event in here, and we didn't provide any additional options. And by default, the event is passive, which means that we shouldn't call prevent default event. So because we know we will prevent the default behavior, we can add passive to false, and therefore our error goes away. Okay, like this is only happening in the emulator, and this is because after we release the touch event, the next touch event on that element will have the same ID. And since we used distinct until changed, we are not able to drag again. I can show you that on real mobile, add to stream, solo layout. So this is basically the same application, but on my phone. Do I need to refresh? This is very weird. Like, I don't understand why it's not working. But let's leave it for now. So there is a quick way we can implement that. Actually, we should have some time, so let's do that. So basically, let's go to our create drag events and then create touch drag events. So we basically need to make sure that each time we stop our dragging behavior, we somehow reset this distinct until change behavior. And the way we can do that is via a separate observable. Let's call it reset touch start. And this will basically be triggered whenever whenever a touch event is triggered. But since we need to define it, like we do create a loop in here, so we cannot just use touch end, because this is touch end, because this is defined. Or can we? We actually can. This is a remnant from another try I've done before. So we just map to null, and we need to import the map to operator, map to. Okay, so we've got our reset behavior stream, and we need to hook it up somehow to this touch start in here. And this is where merge comes in handy again. We can basically merge touch start events with reset touch start events. Reset touch start. That's actually, so at this point, we can use distinct until changed in here, but our event here can be also null. So to account for that, we need to use the elevate operator, and in case there is no identifier, we can default to -1. We need to use nullish coalescing because the identifier might be 0. This is just a number. So in case this is actually null or undefined, we will default to, for example, -1. And since we are allowing nulls in here, after our distinct until changed is resolved, we want to remove those nulls, so we can use filter with Boolean constructor, and we need to import the filter again. Okay. So let's go to our example in here. So we can drag it, and we can drag it again. Does anybody have any questions so far? If not, I will continue. Okay. So this works nice. We already took advantage of the merge operator to to implement two separate behaviors and combine them together, but we still don't support multi-touch possibility for our touch events. And on top of that, we are handling each touch event on the element, the per element. So this is easier, but this limits our possibility to basically orchestrate how do we want those behaviors, or for example multi-touch to be handled. And this is basically the it depends on the UX we want to achieve. So let's start by implementing the multi-touch functionality. So let's create a V3 or V2. Copy the whole thing from here. Good. And let's switch our V1 to V2 in here. And let's start with a small walkthrough of what I actually want to achieve. So up until now, we were listening to mouse to actually touch start events per each of those ABC elements. But if we want to coordinate those touch starts to some degree, we actually need one place at which all of those events can be listened to, and this is where we can listen at the container level. For simplicity, let's consider that X is a document. So basically, when we listen to our touch start at the document level, we end up with a bit more complexity than we used to. So I need my notes. Okay, so because this touch start will contain every touch event that happens within the container, we actually need to filter is draggable first. And after that, we are sure that we are dealing with events that started from one of those squares, at which point we want to handle those separately. So this is where one of the very useful operators in RxJS comes in. This is where we can group by, and to just simplify it, I will make a touch ID. So this will be the identifier of the finger that is currently being touched. And then we can actually, let me use the pen for a moment. So this is where we actually end up with multiple observables, one for each of the IDs. So this would be, I will just create an A touch start. And this is where we can apply similar logic to before. So we we use distinct. I will just make it like that. Distinct, and also yeah, and this is mostly the thing we need to deal with. At which point we can merge them back in together to handle them again together. Let me use pen again. So this is where they come back in. And let's so let's assume that we have this X is also here. And this is where we can start handling and bringing in the move events. So basically, for each of those events in here, we need to match the X touch move. And let's use the pen again. And basically incorporate that into our event. And this is where we handle stuff similarly to how we did before. So for each of those events, we can trigger drag move event. And also use X touch end to basically put an end into our observable. So this is the general idea, but how do we actually implement that? So let's go into the example. Okay, I should stop sharing this camera. Okay, and V2. So this is where it gets a bit harder. So instead of handling touch start, not here. This is touch track. No, these are just mapping functions. So instead of handling touch start per element, we actually need to have a touch start per document. So let's create that touch start document. And let's make a document here. I'm sorry for the okay. Okay, so this is where I'm getting a bit flustered. So because we are handling touch start and actually So we need a way for to filter those touch start on documents to be sure that those are concerning only our draggable elements. So we need some kind of predicate to tell if our target element is actually draggable. So this is the simplest way I could think of, is basically see if our element contains a draggable class. And let's modify our create draggable. I will create similar mouse down document event, so we have similar logic across the functionality. And so where's the make draggable? Create draggable elements. So now, instead of calling make draggable on each of the elements, we actually can call it once make draggable. I will make it make draggable 2 just to distinguish, and pass is draggable element to it. So now we basically need to re-implement our functionality, make draggable 2. And this is going to be a predicate, which will basically go from HTML element. We'll take an HTML element as a parameter and return, is that element draggable? We can call it this, right? And then to our create drag events, instead of passing an element, we can pass is draggable, and we need to use the same I will comment this for the time being, just to not handle too many things at the same time. So here we basically need to use the same interface as before for the is draggable, and pass it along is draggable. So for the mouse events, it's actually should be pretty simple. So here, instead of using mouse down on an element level, we actually need to use our mouse down on the document level. So let's comment that out, and here it's going to be mouse down document. And since we are interested only in the mouse events that are considering our draggable element, we can use filter again. Here will be mouse event, and use our is draggable function with the target. And the rest of the logic should actually stay the same. We get some errors from the touch drag events. So let's align our interface in there as well. Okay. And I will comment it out for a moment. Return empty, empty, empty. Had some trouble importing with the latest RxJS 7. So empty is actually imported from here. Okay, so now we should have less make draggable element. This is unused. This is almost unused. Okay, now it's unused. We can comment it out. And our, of course, it's make draggable. I dropped update position and dispatch event. Let's modify our dispatch event to actually not use the thing in here. This is going to be drag move event target. Okay. Cool. So we've got our mouse behavior back into place. Let's implement the actual touch events as well. So here we are passing in is draggable, and we need to implement the behavior I've drawn in here. So basically, we need to remove this touch start because this is not going to be used anymore, and we should use touch start document instead. Touch start document instead. So let's maybe start from the beginning. Drag start touch equals touch start document, and let's pipe it and think out. Okay. So this is where we need to filter our events. So we can apply filter. Okay, we will apply filter, but in a moment. So as I've discussed before, for each touch event, we actually are receiving multiple touch events. So we can basically take our original event, original event, and some brackets. And take our touches events and return them as an array. Merge map is not important. Merge map. I think we are running out of time, so I would like to actually use the code I've prepared before. just to give you the gist of it. Create drag events. Where does it end? So we are actually missing a bunch of catch event grouped. Should be imported. Observable should be imported out of here. Off should be imported as well. Now this is a big dump. And I've created a couple, and grouped observable is also a part of RxJS grouped observable, and also defer. I think this differs. This is now necessary. Defer. Okay, so we are basically missing those two functions. One is to group touch events, group touch events, and filter touch events. So let's bring in the group touch events. Pum, pum, pum. And filter touch events. And we are also missing one operator, group by. We will need also switch map. Switch map is already here, so exhaust map. Okay. Filter groups event to actually using a different function. Sorry for that. I know this grew quite a bit, and we need an end function as well. Okay, so this is all good apart from to drag event, which I suppose I changed the to touch to drag event. I probably okay. I think we are at least green, and this behavior is working. So now I can actually present to you but something wasn't working and I couldn't figure it out. This is very odd. My phone is basically not responding to touch events. Okay. So I cannot show you on my phone, but the idea is that since we've got our drag start grouped and then matched with the touch with the move events, we can actually use different mapping operators to achieve different user experience. So by using merge map, we actually support multi-touch to a full extent, which will, so if you open the page on your phone, it will actually allow you to use multiple fingers to move multiple elements at the same time. If we make it exhaust map, maybe I'm using like a wrong link somehow. If we use exhaust map, this will actually prevent any consecutive touch or drag event to occur until we finish the previous one. Like this is super weird because it used to work for me just before the presentation on the phone, but it doesn't now. And if we change it to switch map, it will actually maybe I didn't change it here. No. If we use switch map, it will actually hijack the previous drag behavior or dragged element and start. So if we are dragging the first one and we start simultaneously dragging the second one, then the first one will stop being dragged. So this is a matter of what user experience we want to achieve, but by implementing the dragging behavior on the global scale, or actually on the container scale, we could implement that on like on a div level rather than on the whole document level. We could allow dragging within that behavior to basically occur only like handle multi-touch or handle one element at the time. And this is achievable by switching by choosing the correct operator. Okay, so I'm sorry for the fast finish. If you have any questions regarding the resulting code, feel free to tweet at me or direct message me on Twitter at KTRZ__. And if you have any questions now that I could answer, just post them in the comment section. I will be here for 5 more minutes, so I will try to respond. That's it from me. Thank you for taking part in this JavaScript marathon. Hope you enjoyed it and that you got something, learned something useful. That's it for me.